Hi everybody, welcome to another video, and this time it's just a small one, drawing and painting some eyes in my sketchbook using gouache. This sketchbook is one that I picked up for pretty cheap, and its pages are not really meant to handle wet media, but it seems to do okay with gouache, since it's a medium that's a little bit drier than watercolors. This video is actually inspired by a Skillshare class I took a while back, and I'm sort of doing this as my class project. I've started by gathering some reference. I got some portraits off of Pexels and prepared a document with eye close-ups for about 8 eyes, but in this video I only draw 3 of them. So after getting my references up on my computer screen, I'm doing some sketches of the eyes I decided to paint using my mechanical pencil using a HB lead. I use a bit of cross-hatching in order to determine values to help me along a bit later when I actually paint them. It's also a very good warm-up exercise. By the way, all the materials used in this video will be listed in the description below if you're curious. I'm using my Miya Himi Gouache set again, and it has become a go-to for things like this. So it's off screen so you can't see it, but I'm using a lot of paint reactivated from a palette where I've left it to dry after my last painting session. The paint reactivates really well, and while you can't really achieve a really thick consistency with it like that, it's not something that I'm looking for, especially for a painting in my sketchbook. So with the sketches and warm-up done, I go in directly with the gouache on the other page. I use a very diluted burnt umber to do the sketch. I'm going to use a similar method with all the 3 eyes that I'm painting, doing a rough sketch with the burnt umber, which I also use to determine the darkest values, but then go over it with paint and lighten and darken parts as needed. So the way I like to work here is first in semi-transparent layers. I put in a base skin color after doing the rough sketch, then I use white and darker colors to adjust the value as needed. I am also trying to pay attention to color temperature, because using white to lighten the color tends to cool the color somewhat, so I try to add the warmth back in with a touch of yellow ochre mixed in. So in this case, the model has a very fair skin, and it's not all that easy to paint, especially when the lighting is even and there aren't any strong contrasting shadows. Now, the whites of the eyes are never really just white, apart from the fact that there's always some shadow on them, so I make sure to paint them with a pale color I mix first, or a darker one, as this reference image demands. Actually, this sketchbook's paper is a pale yellowish color, so you can't rely on it as a background for cool tone pale colors like the whites of the eyes. And although I don't really like cream paper in sketchbooks, here it's actually a nice sort of contrast. The dark color that I use is not actually black. I like using a mix of Prussian blue and burnt umber for my dark, so if it gets mixed into lighter color, it doesn't result in gray and desaturates the image. I think it's pretty important in order to retain a certain vibrancy. I also think it's quite amazing how much life a couple of dots of pure white can give to an eye. Just add these light spots and suddenly it's alive and not as flat anymore. That's pretty cool. Okay, so now for the second eye. The model from the stock photo is a little baby, And babies' faces are pretty smooth and flat overall, so we don't have a strong brow ridge to cast a shadow. It's pretty much the eye and the eye socket. The challenge for this one was to evoke that 3D-ness around the eye itself and not have it all flat. It's also the one non-blue eye I got from my reference somehow. The reflection in it was pretty intricate. You could see the silhouette of the photographer and the room and everything, but I decided to just simplify it since it's just a sketch. Okay, so here you can see that even though gouache stays relatively put when you compare it to watercolors, when it's as diluted as this, it's bound to slip into adjacent wet areas, so you do need to be careful. Of course, it's easier to correct than watercolors since it's an opaque medium and you can just paint over it if you want. And you can also just absorb the extra paint with a dry paintbrush for a bit of damage control. I do have to say that I'm pretty happy overall about how these came out. It was a really good exercise and I think I learned a few things, not only about how eyes are constructed, so that's knowledge that I can now incorporate into my more illustrative style, but also more confidence in using gouache. The more I use it, the more I think it's a great medium for people who want to start painting even. It's a lot more forgiving than watercolors, and it doesn't result in a lot of mess and plastic waste like acrylics or requires strong chemicals and a long drying time like oils. Really, it's perfect for just messing around and you can get really cool results with it. I'm definitely falling in love with this medium. I think the next step I want to do is to practice using more unnatural and exaggerated colors in my portraits, like greens and blues and purples, instead of just sticking to natural skin tones. I want to try to be more expressive with this kind of art. Maybe I could just make all the shadows turquoise, or I don't know, push the yellows in the highlights, or maybe just make the lights cool and play with red shadows. It's not the sort of thing that comes naturally to me, but I do really want to try. I think that after this spread, I'm officially halfway done with the sketchbook. This is the first sketchbook I've started with the intention of finishing. I've had sketchbook before, of course, in art school and such, but I always abandoned them when they were around 80% full for some reason. This one I'm definitely going to finish. I can't promise a sketchbook tour though, because it does have an awful lot of pages and there's some random stuff in there that I'm not sure I'd like to show. I am doing my best to get through it and drawing it as much as possible though. I have the next sketchbooks lined up and ready to go, though, because who can resist art supply retail therapy, am I right? Alright, and that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video and that my comments on my process were somewhat helpful to you. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with someone you think would like it, and subscribe. You can find the list of materials in the description box below, as well as links to my social media, my shop, and my Patreon, which is probably where my sketchbook tour will go if I do one. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye!